The Quran is often called a mighty book. The text itself says that falsehood cannot approach it from before it or from behind it. Now that's a pretty powerful statement, and it sets a really grand stage for what we're talking about today, a fascinating puzzle that's hidden right in its opening verses.
So, what if a secret, something people have debated for literally centuries, wasn't some complex theological riddle at all? What if it was just a linguistic key, a key that we've simply forgotten how to use? In this explainer, we are going to dig into one of the Quran's most famous puzzles, the mysterious disconnected letters.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with the mystery itself, then look at the most common theory about it. After that, we'll uncover a really cool historical clue from Mecca. Then we'll get into decoding what Ha-Mim actually means, dig into its linguistic roots, and finally, we'll see why this shift from mystery to message is such a big deal.
Okay, let's dive right in. Part 1, the Quran's mysterious letters. So our story starts with this ancient puzzle. At the beginning of 29 chapters of the Quran, you find these combinations of letters, like Alif, La, Mim, or the one we're focusing on, Ha-Mim. They're recited as individual letters, and for well over 1,000 years, they've been the subject of some really deep speculation. Now, to get why this is such a puzzle, you gotta know this key term, mutashabihat. See, the Quran says it has two kinds of verses. The first kind are muhkamat. They're clear, direct, and foundational. But the second kind are the mutashabihat. These are ambiguous or allegorical verses whose ultimate meaning, as our source confirms, is known only to God.
And that idea of unknowable verses leads us straight into part 2, the unknowable meaning theory. Is this whole thing just a divine secret? I mean, when scholars saw these mysterious letters, a certain logic just kind of clicked into place. You can see the thinking here, right? The conclusion that so many people came to was, well, these letters have to be one of those mutashabihat. They must be a divine secret, some kind of code just between God and the prophet, and their meaning is intentionally kept from us. It's a totally reasonable assumption.
I mean, it just makes sense. If the meaning isn't obvious, and the book itself says some things are meant to be mysterious, well, you put 2 and 2 together. It feels like an open and shut case.
But, and this is the twist, our source material for this explainer argues that this long-held, very logical assumption is, in fact, incorrect. And the evidence for that doesn't start in some ancient complex manuscript. It starts with the very first people who ever heard these words. And this is where the detective work really begins. Part 3, we're looking for a clue in Mecca. To find our first piece of evidence, we have to go back in time, right to the scene of the crime, so to speak. We're going to 7th century Mecca, right when the Quran was first being revealed. Now get this, because this is where it gets really interesting. All 7 chapters that start with Ha-Mim were revealed in Mecca. And the audience there, it was a mix. You had believers, sure, but you also had polytheists and people of the book, who were often extremely critical. And yet, and this is the key, there's no record of anyone, not a single person, friend or foe, ever asking the prophet, hey, what does Ha-Mim mean? Why not? The source suggests a super simple reason. They didn't have to ask. They already knew.
So if they knew what it meant, what were they hearing that we've been missing? This brings us to the big reveal in part 4. Ha-Mim means criterion. The answer is all about shifting our perspective from seeing 2 letters on a page to hearing one single word.
So here's the core argument from our source. The original audience wasn't hearing the names of 2 separate letters, Ha and Mim. No, they were hearing a single, authentic Arabic word, Ha-Mim. And it was a word they knew, a word with a really powerful job to do. And this word, wow, it has this incredible duality baked right into it. On one hand, Hemim can mean something intensely positive, like a close, intimate friend, which signals mercy, but on the other hand, it can mean something intensely negative, like a scorching, boiling fire, which signals torment. It holds 2 complete opposite ideas inside one word.
So because Hamim has these 2 opposite meanings, its main job is to act as what's called a furqan, which is basically a criterion, a distinction, a separator. Think of it like a literary signpost. When the first audience heard Hamim at the start of a chapter, it was a signal telling them, okay, pay attention. What's coming next is going to be a clear distinction between good news and a warning, between mercy and punishment.
All right, so that's the theory. It sounds pretty clever, but is there any proof? Well, this is where we get into the really cool linguistic evidence in part 5, the linguistic wall. Our source goes way deeper. anchoring this whole idea in the ancient Semitic roots of the letters themselves. Okay, let's follow the breadcrumbs here. We start with the letter we know as Ha. In the bigger family of Semitic languages, its original name was height. And what does the word height mean? It literally means a wall. So the letter Ha itself carries this ancient built-in idea of a barrier, a division, a separation. Pretty cool, right?
And our source uses this absolutely stunning image to tie it all together. Hamim acts as this conceptual wall, a wall that separates two completely different realities, and it has a door that leads to one or the other. On one side, there's mercy. On the other side, there's torment.
So you see how it all connects. The ancient meaning of the letter Ha as a wall perfectly reinforces the job of the word Hamim as a furqan, or criterion. It is the dividing line, separating the path of truth from the path of falsehood, the promise of a reward from the threat of a punishment.
Okay, let's bring it all home. Part 6, From Mystery to Message. Why does any of this even matter? Well, understanding Hamim isn't just some academic brain teaser. It actually changes how we read and understand these verses in a fundamental way.
So how did we even lose the original meaning in the first place? This timeline lays it out perfectly. The original audience had a hearing-first experience. They heard the word Hamim, and they knew it meant criterion. But later on, when the Quran was written down and standardized, scholars saw two separate letters, Ha and Mim. That visual separation on the page made them pause and created a mystery where there hadn't been one before. So by going back to the oral and linguistic roots, we're basically restoring that original function.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. Hamim goes from being this unknowable, divine secret into a brilliant and functional literary device. It's a powerful opening statement, a thematic key that unlocks the entire chapter that follows, signaling to the listener, get ready for a message of both mercy and warning.
And this whole journey leaves us with this one big final thought. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many other puzzles from our ancient past aren't really unsolvable mysteries at all, but are simply languages, sounds, and contexts that we've just forgotten how to hear?